All right, this third part is on what we call systemic abuse. People who are unfamiliar with the concept of systemic abuse may conceive of the abuse of power as only occurring on a one-on-one basis. So you have a person in power and they abuse their power and hurt people. But systemic abuse occurs when the system, like a family, an organization, a church, or a government, functions to foster the abuse of those it purports to protect. Even when acts of abuse are perpetrated solely by the organization's leader, his or her behaviors may be perpetuated by a systemic response, with the goal being to preserve itself in reaction to a perceived threat to its existence. So again, going back to the Ravi Zacharias situation, the system moved in to protect not just Ravi, but the system. Let's consider a definition of systemic abuse. A system is a combination of parts, and they come together and form a unitary whole. So it's parts that work together. In the mechanical world, a vacuum cleaner is a system. All the parts work together for the purpose of cleaning my rugs. In an investment system, all the parts work together to increase money. A system can also be defined by an organization's set of doctrines or principles used to explain the working arrangement of the whole. So a system is a family, a school is a system, religious institution is a system, political groups, governments. Systems, even mechanical ones, are generally designed to serve humanity. Government, education, religious and social systems, even corporations, were created to serve humans. The word system in the Greek comes from two words, together, stand. So system means to stand together for a good purpose. The second word, abuse, comes from the Latin word abutor, which means to misuse, to force, to deceive, or to waste. It includes feeding off of people, lying to them, coercing them, using them wrongly, wasting, reducing humans by neglect, misuse, or harm. So together, our term, systemic abuse, means that a system designed to serve humans is instead destructive, reducing and harming those who would receive safety, care, and respect otherwise. So the parts of the system stand together with the purpose of serving the system rather than the system serving the people. A picture from the physical realm increases our understanding. Our immune system is a network of parts that protects our body from pathogens and other foreign substances. It destroys malignancies. It removes debris. An autoimmune disorder is a disease that instead attacks the self rather than protects it. In other words, the tissues are attacked by their own protective system. Our own body cells are seen as foreign, and the consequences, of course, can be disastrous. In order for systemic abuse to occur in a group that's theoretically united around a good purpose, the overt or stated purpose is, in fact, not the governing purpose. For abusive conduct to be perpetrated by agents of a system, that conduct must be facilitated by fundamental, though often hidden, properties of the system itself. In other words, there is a susceptibility to abuse that is built in at some underlying level of the system's architecture. So one example is a well-known organization in the United States called the Boy Scouts of America. Many men have come forward about their victimization as elders while they were part of a scout troop. The stated purpose of this organization is to assist young men in learning how to make ethical and moral decisions. It is one of the largest youth organizations in the United States, and it has in fact done much good. However, even an organization with lofty goals can fall prey to systemic abuse. So-called perversion files were kept by the Boy Scouts for almost 100 years. Many of those files exposed collaboration between the Boy Scout leadership and the justice system, police chiefs, prosecutors, pastors, and Boy Scout leaders, all working together to cover up abuses for the sake of the organization. So in this example, we have two systems colluding in actions completely opposed to their stated purpose in order to cover up the sexual abuse of boys. A system that was designed to teach ethical and moral principles, joined with a system of justice. And together they made immoral, unethical, and unjust choices. Clearly, the hidden purpose of system protection ultimately governed the Boy Scouts rather than protection of the boys. And as a result, so-called morality, ethics, and justice work together to silence the abused boys, destroy trust, and protect perpetrators. Again, a body destroying itself with disastrous consequences while believing they are preserving themselves as an ethical moral system through unethical and immoral choices. We are all painfully aware of the media reports of sexual abuse in recent years in the faith community. We have seen many systems, while attesting to a spiritual purpose, have simultaneously worked hard to cover up and deny abuse. Many have done so. Why? To protect God's work, which actually means preserving an institution rather than human beings. Again, Ravi Zacharias, Willow Creek, Morris Hill, and there will be more. I'm sure we're not through. The people of God and their institutions have in fact protected organizations, power, position, wealth, and many other things. We have guarded our material treasures and reputations rather than the treasure of image bearers. Talk about self-injury and disastrous consequences. If you destroy the people, there is no future. So what do we need to understand about systems? Well, first, the system is individuals in relationship to one another. All systems are comprised of individuals gathered together for a shared purpose. This perspective is critical because if we are interested in changing a system, we can very easily get overwhelmed and give up if we forget this basic fact. The power in the group often makes change seem completely impossible. But in fact, we know that is not true. The Atlantic slave trade, segregation in the US schools in the South, the Nazi regime, all very powerful systems challenged by the voices of individuals. They resulted in system change. We see examples of this in Martin Luther King, Solzhenitsyn, Bonhoeffer, not to mention our Lord Jesus Christ. So one component of the system is the leader, like a Hitler, or a powerful charismatic leader, or a dominating father in the home. That one person usually has a group of close followers with power in the system due to access to the leader. These are the us connected to the leader, the insiders, the ones in the know, board members, wealthy donors, members of a favored gender or race, who then exert undue influence in the system. They are in positions of power and work hard to protect both the positions and the power that they hold. The leaders and these close groups are overtly committed to the stated mission, often with great passion. It is, however, very easy to get caught up with the trappings of power and gain, resulting in a mere preservation of the system that provides those outcomes. Leaders shape systems. The more desperate the system, pre-Nazi Germany, a faith community devastated by its previous pastor's sexual abuse, hungry people, war-torn people, they're all desperate and eager for a champion to ride in on a white horse and make everything all better. People in these circumstances are vulnerable to being controlled and manipulated. In essence, they rightly long for a Messiah, but they are blinded and they follow the wrong one, not realizing it until the reality behind the stated purpose is exposed. Another component of systems is, of course, the followers, with less power, but with unquestioning belief in the leadership and active protection of that leadership. So any threat, they try to stop. They have often bought into the idea that we in this special institution are also special and need this place to be protected at all costs. In faith settings, they are the ones who use religious teachings to support the power and maintain the leaders. They are the members who alienate others in the pews, who question leadership, or worse yet, actually bring allegations against leadership. They are followers who serve the cause, and in doing so, destroy themselves, relinquish their own voices, trustworthiness, and power. They are the obedient. They are compliant by action. By their compliance, they align themselves with the power, acting according to its dictates, not unlike an autoimmune disorder, which functions to seemingly protect the system, but in doing so is actually destroying it from the inside out. There's another type of participant in a system. They are not compliant by words or action, but by blindness. Sadly, I fear we have all been party to this passivity. The turning of the head, a denial of reality. Surely it cannot be as they say. A choice for comfort rather than disturbance. Families where the spouse protects the abuser or the addict by not seeing are compliant by blindness. We have religious institutions across the world where children have reported abuse, and the, quote, law-abiding citizens of that group have done nothing in response. We have discredited and ignored their allegations. Why? Because it will completely disrupt the system if we acknowledge the truth. Those things don't happen in our families. It cannot be true. The accused is so nice and teaches the children and would never do anything like that. Or when it happens to an adult woman in a religious body, manipulated and abused by her shepherd at a vulnerable time, we say it's not true. Have you heard him teach? It cannot be true. She's an adult. She probably seduced him, and we ignore her screams. We actually do not believe that powerful leaders we enjoy could possibly be abusive. We do not want to see, because if we see, we must act or carry the guilt of not doing so. We do not want to see because it threatens our beliefs in the virtue of our leaders and the worth of the system. People believe in the systems they are accustomed to, our own nation, our church, our family, or an institution. It's very easy for us to do so unthinkingly. The stated goal is wonderful. We believe in it. Institutions such as church and family are, after all, God ordained and therefore must be protected at all costs. The leadership is good. Did you hear what they taught? Do you know what they promised? And somehow we think externals tell the whole truth. And then, of course, there's always the harm of exposure. That will happen. What will happen to us if this truth is known? It'll destroy this wonderful organization or that wonderful person. The truth will damage God's name if it is known. Let's go back to the example of the Boy Scouts. In order for those abuse files to exist for 100 years, people had to report the abuse. Otherwise, there would have been no files. The victims had to have spoken. Then leadership had a choice: respond to what is being said or bury it. They buried it. Eventually, the problem was discussed, and protection from exposure rather than protection of the boys was the choice. These decisions involved many people, and they lasted for decades, a century, until victims began to speak out in public for themselves. Again, the thinking goes like this: it cannot be exposed. Our purpose is to teach boys ethical and moral principles. And if this is known, it will destroy our very fine mission and organization. So the decision is made to hide what is unethical and immoral so as to not hurt the organization teaching ethics and morals. Your head hurt yet? So we hide sexual abuse and we fail to save the children. However, that decision itself is utterly immoral. We defend and deny truth. We cover. We react with disbelief, minimizing, lying to ourselves and others, pretense, rewording something to make it look like something else. The reflexive impulse to defend usually includes outright lying, first to ourselves and then to others. The goal is to show that what is actually is not. So rather than calling it sexual abuse, we call it a misunderstanding. We would rather believe a reassuring lie than an utterly inconvenient and disturbing truth. In Nazi Germany, the Fuhrer was bringing Germans dignity and prosperity. In Rwanda, they were bringing justice and fairness and cleansing the country of the so-called cockroaches. In the Boy Scouts, it did not happen, even though the files grew fatter, and we are protecting our moral mission. In religious bodies, the victim is silenced, their character assassinated, and the accused protected for the sake of God's work, so we say. We often protect the system by protecting the accused. We say we do not want to falsely accuse, and of course we do not. But we are not as adamant about the failure to protect vulnerable people. Vulnerable human beings need protection in every single human system. Power easily goes awry and is misused. There is no human system so good that this is not possible. Vulnerable ones need a voice. They are, however, the most easily discounted by virtue of their very vulnerability. We tend to give more credibility to those who are not afraid, have confidence, are articulate, and seem important to sustaining the system. We give more credibility to power. We say the leader is strong, articulate, and so gifted. How can you speak ill of a leader who gives us food when we are hungry or promises us a better tomorrow for our children? How can you speak ill of someone who teaches like that? And so we stand with him and say we know him and he would never fail to protect the vulnerable. So therefore, there cannot be any victims in our group, and you need to stop maligning his character and threatening a good nation or a good work. We protect the reputation of the system. We protect a particular race or ethnicity as superior. We protect a nation as exceptional. We say we are the God-ordained people. We are the faith-based organization. We stand for morality and purity. We say we are the ones serving children, youth, or the lost, as if that meant we would never perpetrate against them. And unlike our Lord, we nod and say how important that group or person is and how misunderstood they are. We give no weight to the weak, the desperate voice, and those being crushed. And finally, the truth cannot get out because of our reputation. In the religious world, we deny what we hear because we want to protect the name of God, we say. If word gets out that we have somebody fraudulent or abusing children or battering a spouse or treating group members in nasty bullying ways, then the reputation of God will be marred. We must prevent that. How can it ever be wrong to protect the name of such a good work? You see how we can use good words to cover evil deeds? Remember, we said the word system means together stand. It creates a formidable force. But there is another important word embodied in those like Solzhenitsyn, Bonhoeffer, and certainly Jesus himself. And the word is dissident, which means to sit apart. So you who are struggling with broken, tyrannical, abusive systems, others call good, remember, it is vital that we see truly and clearly and call things by their right names. The change of massive systems only comes one by one. It looks impossible. It looks frankly hopeless. But one by one, the light breaks through. I have worked with hundreds of thousands, probably hundreds of victims of sexual abuse. Many have been from families where abuse was passed down through the generations. But then one steps out and speaks the truth. The system closes against them, but they pursue the truth and do the courageous work of facing the lies and choosing a new way, one by one. But their children know a different path. Yes, they have a struggling parent trying to find greater freedom from the old lies and anxiety, ridden often throughout. But no sexual abuse. It's a new way to be a child in that family, not to be sexually abused. They actually have to be told so they can be protected from those who might hurt them, what sexual abuse is. But they never go to sleep at night wondering if they will be safe. Do not be anesthetized by this world's good systems, controlled by the bad ones, complicit in chosen blindness. Do not be anesthetized by good systems that carry the name of our Lord. Do not sit down hopeless, thinking it's too big and change will never come. I close this session with a quote from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, neither are you free to abandon it. That is a call to you and to me to live on this earth in a way that looks like our Redeemer.
Thank you, Diane. We will now move into another round of questions. We will start with, I have felt that the success and expansion of my church is being prioritized over the actual community, the people. When I speak up, I am seen as the bad person and not committed. How should I respond to this?
When you say your church, I don't know if you are part of the church or if you are in leadership in the church. I would hope that if you have a position of some sort of power, you might do some teaching, actually. Part of what is being missed is the fact that if you go back to the New Testament and Jesus' time here, and the expectation for the Messiah, who was going to make everything okay, was nothing like what he looked like. And so there may be a way, even if you're somebody who sits in the pew and doesn't have a position, of pulling some people together to do a study to look at those kinds of things in the scriptures. Because what he did is take care of people basically one by one. And what he did in doing that, of course, is eventually provide redemption to all human beings. I mean, they're the outgrowth of that one by one blind person, one lame person, a few fishermen, and whatever. It was very small. And it is the replicating of ourselves in the care of other people who then go on and do as we have done. That is what makes it grow in a way that is healthy. The institution and system isn't going to go to heaven. The only ones who are going to go to heaven are the people. And what you want is for them to know a taste of it here and to understand what it really means, which we will talk about more in the last two sessions, what it really means to follow Christ in these places. So, again, it depends on your position, what you can do and what you can't do. But even if it's to get a few people together to pray and study some of what Jesus did little by little in the Gospels, it will multiply. It will bear fruit. Might not turn the system upside down, but it will bear fruit.
That's helpful. Thank you. Our next question is, in what way, as the church, can we follow up on accusations? For we know that there are those who may make false accusations, yet we want to also believe that those who are making the accusation. So how can we find out the truth without destroying the reputations?
Well, first of all, the research on false accusations is that it's usually 7 to 9%. So that means that we have 90% are true. Typically, we are protective of our organizations or people that we love who are in leadership or whatever. And so we typically think about those things in almost the reverse manner. The odds are much higher that there's a false accusation, particularly if it's somebody we don't know well, we don't trust well, whatever. But we do need to understand that's what the research says. So you've got probably 90% likelihood of truth when somebody does that. Secondly, you can't do it by yourself. I mean, churches aren't trained to figure out if things are actually right or anything like that. They don't know how to investigate, and they're obviously biased anyway. So somebody else needs to be brought in. Somebody who works with churches, someone who knows how to ask questions of someone who says they've been a victim of something. I encourage churches to find people in their area who are trained in these things. I would also say, and of course, I've got an audience from not just the U.S., but in the U.S., if it's a minor, you have to report it. You don't have a choice. I don't know what the rules are, so to speak, in other countries. There are things. I'm on the board for Grace, Godly Response to Abuse in a Christian Environment. They have all kinds of resources and ways of helping churches and teaching them how to safeguard their people, how to respond to allegations and all of that. So I would look for ways like that to be educated. The leadership should be educated, but so should people, not just those in positions. So that if somebody comes forward, perhaps, let's say a woman comes forward about something, there are women in the church who know how to walk with her, who know how to find help for her, who know how to help her say what happened, who know who to contact to help the church know what to do with what she has to say. Human beings are by nature self-protective. When you stick us all together by the hundreds or thousands in an organization, we're still self-protective. And that alters how we listen and how we make choices. So some of that has to come from the outside, or we will not do a good job and we will hurt vulnerable people.
That's very helpful. Our next question is, does everything need to be exposed to everyone? Sometimes leaders want to protect individuals from others by keeping sensitive or shocking issues to a smaller group.
I keep feeling like a psychologist who has 100 questions before I answer, and I can't do that. It depends. First of all, if it's child abuse, then people need to know. You need to get authorities involved, and people need to know, because otherwise they won't know to keep their children protected. And it's not just their children protected at church, it's their children protected if this person shows up after school to say, I came to pick you up because your mommy's busy. So it depends on who the victim is. At the same time, there are details that don't need to be shared. Number one, somebody who's been sexually abused, or let's say raped or something, doesn't want to face everybody on Sunday morning and know that they know all the details. That doesn't feel okay. And so there need to be some people who know the details, obviously, but and the church may have to say, we have somebody who committed rape, but you don't have to tell them all the ways that happened. They don't, and you also have people in all of our churches. I mean, at least again, U.S. stats, but 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused by the age of 18. You think about the people in the pews of your churches. So you don't want to traumatize people by telling them all sorts of details that trigger their own memories and their own history of abuse. So yes, there needs to be care, but again, that needs to be advised partly by people who are partial and outside the system, because we, by nature, will want to protect other people rightly, but also we want to protect the system. And so there need to be people helping us. How do we tell what happened to a victim without traumatizing other victims? But how do we also do it in a way that helps other people understand how serious this is? And if it was child abuse, how to keep their children safe or whatever. And so probably if you had more than one of these in 20 years in an institution, they probably wouldn't be handled the same way. They're unique. So again, you need people to come alongside with expertise, I think.
Thank you. Our next question is, how do you distinguish between sexual misconduct and sexual abuse? Should there be different levels and different levels of consequences?
Well, I assume by sexual misconduct, you mean something that happened between 2 adults or something like that. But even that isn't necessary. I don't really differentiate between them, because if you have 2 adults and one of them is the pastor, it's not misconduct, it's abuse because of the power. It has to do with the power. And even in relationships, say between a man and a woman in their 20s, the odds are very high that physically he's stronger. So I don't know that I would think that way about it. They're both wrong. They both do lots of damage, not only to whoever got hurt, but to the person who did the hurting. So all of that needs attention, no matter what.
That's helpful. Thank you. We have time for one more question before we take our break. What is the church's responsibility when one member pleads guilty to sexually abusing children? And how should the church respond?
Quickly. I would immediately bring authorities in, because the odds are that what you've been told is true, and the odds are very high that it is not all of the truth. And you have no way of knowing what's going on now, how to currently protect children, all of those things. And so you would have to bring in people who have authority. I mean, it's a crime. You can't have sex with children and have it not be a crime. So, that's like somebody coming to you and saying, I murdered my father last night. What would you do? It's a similar kind of thing. It's a crime. You call authorities. You walk with the person. You don't abandon them. You certainly can affirm the fact that they came forward, but you can't deceive yourself for years and have multiple victims and then tell somebody and tell the whole truth. You're not capable of telling the whole truth anymore. You've been practicing deception for so long. So you need authorities, you need therapeutic help come in, all kinds of things. And if it was children and things like that, you need to notify the church, because what you don't know is whether they're victims in the church.
A follow-up question to that one is, what if the perpetrator claims he was in his teens when he was sexually abusing children and the abuse ended 20 years ago?
Well, I don't know if that's true. I mean, there's no way for you to know whether that's true. And I guess I'd wonder, why are you telling that now at 20 years? At the very least, that person needs to see somebody in a therapeutic way who can help figure all of that stuff out, because you don't do that and just stop and then you're fine. I mean, this is not an okay person. Even if it's all stopped, even if that's true, the guilt and the weight of that and the way it shaped his life as a teen and everything else. And one of the questions I would have as a therapist is, wonder who abused him first. Just again, kids don't just wake up one morning and start abusing children sexually. So you need help. And so you may not be able to discern all the truth yourself, but you need to have this person work with people who can help him heal and make sure he's safe now for other people.